We will start with Florida-Georgia, the big rivalry game. Florida won this game. Florida covered this game.
Oh, my God. I was like, holy hell, what game did I watch? I am not prepared for this episode.
Florida won this game in one sense, but very much not in another. Georgia won the game 42-20. They went up 28-3 at half after giving a touchdown to a bunch of their key contributors, right? We had Edwards and McIntosh and Bowers and McConkey, all those guys getting in on the action. All of those names had a pretty big game. Nice game.
They did.
Nice game for Georgia. Much of what you'd expect. Florida fought back, though, valiantly for those of us who had Florida plus 22.5 or plus 23.
Yeah.
At what point the Gators pulled within a score.
They did.
Late in the third quarter, 28-20, a nice 78-yard touchdown grab and run from Xavier Henderson. But then Georgia stopped playing with its food, a term we've used here time and again on the show. Stopped playing with their food. They poured it on in the final couple moments of the game with 2 scores, ended up winning by 22 points. Down the stretch, Georgia looked really good putting this game out of reach. The issue, though, is 3 turnovers. And whenever you're talking about the Georgia Bulldogs, of course, you're splitting hairs, trying to find things that are wrong. Everyone's trying to find something that's wrong with a thing that otherwise is pretty good, right? The 3 turnovers, though, are of note, especially going into a week where they're going to have to square off against Tennessee, because that is not an offense. It's not Florida's offense. The Tennessee offense is not one you want to give extra opportunities. You don't want to give them 3 extra drives next week. That could definitely have ramifications. In this one, they get away with it. I guess it's not that big of a deal, but even in the post-game comments, Kirby Smart, as these coaches are wont to do, they point out all of the flaws that immediately got stuck in their craw. And I think that would be the only thing really on the Georgia side that you would look at and say, all right, they need to improve that.
Isn't it amazing that was it 2 years ago, Kyle Trask lit up this Georgia team, this Georgia program, and now we are coming away from this game saying, well, Georgia won by 3 touchdowns, but what's going on with the Dogs? They just beat Florida by 3 touchdowns. Should we be a little bit worried? That's an incredible turn of events to get lit up by Kyle Trask and Dan Mullen, Kyle Pitts, and all that. Yeah, you're not wrong. The fact that Georgia came out the way that they did, so confidently and so assured of their game plan and so balanced, and Stetson Bennett making plays and the defense obviously making plays and really roughing up Florida early. Florida could get nothing going on offense early in this game. It was 28-3 quickly, right?
Yeah.
Florida scored 3 points in the first half of this game. And so I think we're basically seeing stretches of Georgia looking human. And that is kind of shocking after last year. And I think we just need to look at Georgia as its own thing this year, because it's not fair to judge Georgia against what they were last year, to me, because they were just so above and beyond. So Georgia is a really strong team. They are among the country's best. They are not an A-plus perfect team every minute of every game. That was my takeaway, that you can beat a rival at a neutral site, even though it's a rival with a first-year coach, even if it's a flawed rival, a rival with its own successful baggage by 3 touchdowns. You got to, at a certain point, if you're a Georgia fan, or if you cover the sport nationally, or you just enjoy the sport nationally, say, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Nice little Saturday for the Dogs.
I don't even have a sound for what they did here. It was like they were cooking a steak, they let it rest, and then they ate it. Yeah. That was what happened here. I don't have someone wants to put a sound together for that. Be my guest, but 42-20, your final score here, as Georgia goes into a big week against Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Tennessee wasn't looking ahead to the Georgia game.
As I tried to tell you.
Maybe Tennessee was not looking ahead. Shut up, Ty. Tennessee wins 44-6, Dan. This one was not even close.
No.
Tennessee just absolutely obliterated the Kentucky Wildcats, both on offense, as they often do, but also on defense. 205 total yards for the Cats. Will Levis, first-round prospect Will Levis, 98 yards passing with 3 interceptions. They basically turned him into Spencer Petras in this game, which is not meant to be as mean as it sounds, but it's still pretty mean.
Spencer Petras had a better day than Will Levis did yesterday.
Still pretty mean. Hendon Hooker missed 6 throws. Another monster game for Jalen Hyatt, who is starting to creep into the Heisman discussion as Hendon Hooker continues his run as Tennessee quarterback. It is fully shaping into an SEC Saturday next weekend in Week 10 because of not just the Tennessee-Georgia game, but also the Bama-LSU one that I mentioned earlier. But there really isn't much you can say here, Dan. This was a quick game in the sense that Tennessee asserted its dominance rather quickly. I was watching, waiting, hoping that Kentucky would mount more of a comeback, more of a charge, put up more of a fight. They had nothing. They had nothing here, no answer for Tennessee. And I came away from this one feeling like, first off, Tennessee's getting better. Secondly, wondering if the big win over Bama a few weeks ago now was some sort of watershed moment for the Vols, in that they got over that hump and now they are able to ascend to some greater height. Almost like Neo at the end of the Matrix. He's just waiting for something. Was that moment, the waiting for that moment, the Alabama win for Tennessee? Because they were awesome. They were just awesome in this game. Yeah,
and they just sort of did what they've been doing on offense. They were balanced. They were fast. They were going downfield. Obviously, Cedric Tillman comes back. Not a huge factor in this specific game, but certainly adds gravity to the situation that you have to pay attention to him if you're in that Kentucky secondary. And Kentucky secondary had its hands absolutely full. They got torched. You saw like sort of the delay routes and the crossing routes, and Jalen Hyatt, just creeping into the Heisman conversation, just creeping into the end zone over and over again for Tennessee. And this Kentucky defense has been their strength. They were on their heels the entire time. They did not look prepared for the tempo. They did not look prepared for the speed. Very few teams are and will be. Alabama was not fully ready with a better secondary than what Kentucky puts on the field. But no, Tennessee is operating. I saw the comparisons. I think it was Stu Mandel from The Athletic talking about how there are comparisons creeping in, like you say, Jalen Hyatt in the Heisman conversation, about comparisons to the 2019 LSU team, which, given the magnitude and the manner in which Tennessee is scoring, and given that, the defense has shown signs of life and holding their own like they did against LSU, now what they did against Kentucky, I don't think this year's Tennessee defense is where that year's, it was different, was it not? Calling that LSU defense, but showing signs of life, this Tennessee defense, as the season progresses. If you remember, they had the back and forth game against Pitt, obviously back and forth against Alabama, but getting more and more stops as they're getting healthier. And I mean, it's this year's, even though Alabama LSU is a very big game, Georgia Tennessee seems to be, the way that we always used to joke, the game of the year of the millennium kind of thing.
Yeah. No, it's a huge game. These two teams have been a bit on a collision course, if you would believe a lot of the preseason hype. I think we were all pretty high on Tennessee. We just weren't sure how high we were allowed to be. It felt like there was some risk to really putting yourself out there and going all in on the Vols, because there were questions, right? There were questions about the offensive line and the defense. And, some of that stuff is still there, but the offense is playing at such a high level right now. As you said, a good Kentucky defense just seemed ill-prepared. They had no answers for it. They were getting confused. They weren't prepared for the speed. So it'll be interesting. Next week will be very, very interesting when Tennessee goes to Athens. I'm excited.
Man, Will Levis did not have himself a night.
Not
Will
a first
Levis
round
was
pick.
completely
Not a first
under
round
fire,
pick, guys. Hate to inform
confused by the Tennessee defense. Yeah, that was wall-to-wall dominance from the Vols.
Not a really nice kid and a good prospect.
Yeah.
Not a first round pick.
Okay, whatever. Not my concern.